All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. This is the fourth webinar in our series related to the COVID-19 Business Survival Kit webinar. This is the fourth webinar, and what we... Sorry. All right. Sorry, I forgot to unmute. Okay, you should hear me now. All right, everybody can hear me. Can you hear me? Okay, good, good. Getting thumbs up. All right, thank you so much for joining us. This is the fourth webinar in our COVID-19 Business Survival Kit. My name is Ammar Mango. The webinar today will talk about what should I expect from my employees. In these difficult times, when you talk to people, lots of new things are coming up. We're learning about ourselves, about our employees, things that we did not know before. It's known also that in crises, sometimes people might surprise you positively or negatively. So what should I expect from my employees in situations like this? This is the subject for today. We have to remember that a lot of the reaction I'm getting from my employees depends also on me and how I'm coping with this situation and how I'm managing it. So we have to remember the three layers that you have to watch for: yourself, your employees, your customers. This is where you have to start. So we have to talk about that. We've talked about it briefly in a previous session. We have to talk about it now too. So we have to start with self, work with your employees, and work with your customers. First of all, working with yourself, you have to find stability. You have to find the peace within. That requires mental resilience. Mental resilience requires practice. Don't assume that you are okay the way you are. It's important that we do what helps us stabilize. Here are a few things that definitely can help you stabilize self, be at peace with the situation. Daily exercise definitely helps. Meditation, daily exercise, I have missed for the last 2-3 days. And I can feel the difference between when I exercise and when I do not. Meditation, I have to do daily. There are different types of meditation. Some people cannot take the just sit peacefully and breathe meditation. But there are different types of meditation. For example, Tai Chi is a dynamic moving meditation for those who do not have the patience of sitting. There are different ways you do meditation. So if you've tried it once and you did not like it, don't assume this is the only way to meditate. There are other ways, and you need to find out which way works best for you. A couple other exercises that I use is the 3 points of gratitude every morning, writing down on a piece of paper. It can be just a Post-it note. 3 simple things that you are grateful for. Definitely helps. Builds mental resiliency. And at the end of the day, to write down 3 things, also simple things, but that actually contribute to your strategic goals. 3 things that you have accomplished by end of day. Another thing you can do is to be an observer of yourself. Watch your mood. Many customers come back to me saying that they are feeling more grouchy than usual. They are a little bit tough on the team, a little bit tough on themselves, on the family, etc. This is acceptable to happen. It's normal to happen. You just have to observe, learn about your mood, learn about your emotions. This helps you have the observer view. It's very important. And of course, sleep well. All of these will help you stabilize. And the most important thing I find in all of these is that it's not an all or nothing. It's not I either do all of them or none of them. It's not like if I miss a couple of days, like I said, I've missed the last 3 days of exercise, or 2 days, I think 3 days of exercise. So it does not mean I'm hopeless and I'll stop. Okay, I'll come back tomorrow, for example. I missed the meditation. I missed a couple of meditations. It's okay. You can come back. You can always come back the next day. When you wake up, you can always come back. So why is this important? Why are we talking about these things that usually people find complimentary? They do not even consider them important. Why are we talking about these things? And you cannot talk to your employees when you are off center. You have to sit down, figure out things for yourself internally. You have to be at peace, understand how do you feel about this? What are your emotions? So once you find your center, you can talk to others. If you do not find your center, be at peace with yourself, know exactly how you feel, how you're dealing with the situation. You cannot talk to anyone else. So you will confuse people. Now, this does not mean that you cannot have fears. You cannot have uncertainties. You cannot have negative emotions. We're not saying that. But we're saying you need to be aware of this. You need to be aware of where you are. Once you are aware, things are stable. If you are not aware, or you are avoiding the feeling, or you are in fear and denying it, or you do not see the fear, then we have a problem. So this is very important to find your center before you can help your employees and your customers find their center. What else? Let's talk about a few bad practices that we have to be careful about in these times. During my discussion, feel free to ask questions. If I feel that the question you sent, like some questions come up where I feel I will answer, I will continue and you will find my answer in the presentation. If not, I might stop and talk about the question that you sent. Now, one of the misconceptions I see with some clients and some businesses out there is a misunderstanding of what working from anywhere looks like or working remotely looks like. Some interpret that as working from my mobile, using WhatsApp, using Zoom. This is not enough. You have to have a system, you have to have a process that actually fulfills your needs and your employees' needs, from being connected, from your ability to collaborate, from your ability to understand how things are going, how productive are we, how able are we or unable are we to communicate. Just assuming that the phone, the WhatsApp, the Zoom will do it, it will not do it. See, the problem with counting on these tools alone is that what's happening is that you're not connected. You are actually disconnected, and you are connecting only when needed. So as an employee, I feel I am disconnected from the organization, but when you need me, you call me. Okay. What we want to create is the feeling of collaboration, of being the team, the synergetic team together, even though we are working from home. So there are systems that will help you connect, work from home, and not feel distant or disconnected from the rest of the team. So assuming phone, WhatsApp, Zoom is enough, it is not enough. So you have to be careful about that. Many customers I talk to, they say, yeah, we are connected, we're working from anywhere, no problem. And we're using WhatsApp, phone, and Zoom, and they think this is okay and it's working. It is not working because you do not know how distant this makes you actually with the team. You're not one team, you are not connected anymore. Another bad practice is to assume that employees will not work when they are away. So to have what we call the X theory thinking. So we assume that, you know what, people are not at work, they are at home. I don't know what they're doing. So maybe they don't have the discipline to sit. Maybe they are honest, but don't have the discipline to sit. Maybe they don't have the value. Maybe my employees think that since I did not ask them for anything, maybe they're not busy. They're not doing anything. So don't assume that people will not work when they are away. They will work, but you need to manage your team so they do the work at the right, with the right mindset, with the right productivity while they are away. But don't assume that they will not, because that assumption will lead to repercussions on how you deal with the team, and it will show. Another bad practice that we see and we do sometimes is that we assume that everybody understands what the situation is and there is nothing for me to explain. Do not assume that there is nothing you can say to your employees. That means that you are assuming that what you know and your thoughts and your aspirations and your feelings are clear to your team. 9 times out of 10, they are not clear because you have not clarified them. So what are they going to do? They are going to guess. So you have to make sure that you communicate with your employees. Many people I talk to say, what do I tell my employees? There's nothing to say. I have nothing to say to my employees. It's a tough situation, tough circumstances that we're in. What am I going to say to the employees? This is not good, of course. You have to talk to your employees. And what you say is also important. And how you say it is important. So this is also a bad practice, is to assume that there is nothing you can say to your employees. We have to work with the employees. Not as much as you used to, but even more when you are, let's call it physical distancing. I like this name for it. It's physical distancing, not social distancing, because you can have the social norms of the organization. We can have a society, our organizational culture, even though we are physically distancing, but we can still be a team. In many countries, they're easing the lockdown, and some companies are bringing back employees to the work location. Many employees who are doing that, they're finding out things are not exactly the same. And we were expecting this. Things are not exactly the same. So we need to work with our employees, make sure we manage this change, even if we think we're going back to what's normal, because the new normal is not the normal that was before. And we are finding this out as we are going out to our customers, we're working with employees, going back to our workplaces. Here are a few tips on what you can do to improve the quality of synergy, the quality of the work environment that you are creating for employees so you can get your best results. Remember, some people wait until they know. I was talking to a client yesterday, and the client was saying, let's wait because probably beginning of June, things will be clearer as far as how well we will be able to do in the future. So I'm going to wait to talk to my employees about what do we think will happen until then. That is not a good practice. You have to talk to your employees even if you do not have all the answers. You do not want to be missing in action. You don't want to be missing in action. You have to be out there with your employees daily. So I used to meet with employees weekly. Now I meet daily. We have been doing this since the lockdown started. For our company, and I know many companies like this, we did not go back to the workplace as a team. I go back sometimes for meetings. Some of my team members go back for meetings once in a while. But in general, we're not back in the workplace, but we are together. We're working together. We have a workplace virtually. One of the things that we have to get used to is that when you are working virtually, you need to be there for your employees, even though you don't have the answers, but you have to be there. So I want us to be there for the employees. So the bravery of standing up and saying that this is a tough time for everyone, even yourself, admit that these are challenging times, don't sugarcoat it, because putting unrealistic expectations will break your team. Remember, at this time, you don't want to talk about, it's not about you. We don't want to be talking to our employees about me. It's not about my uncertainties. I need to work with the employees. So don't start with the employees about your personal fears. I mean, you have to say that this is a tough time, this is challenging. You have to be careful with the message. So if you have, remember the instability we talked about in the beginning, if you have instability and lack of being centered in you, don't let that translate to your employees. Make sure you stabilize, you are centered, then talk to your people. And then it's okay to talk, to be clear. We have here a question. I think if we are clear on what we expect from employees, then we do whatever action required to enable them to perform well. Yes. So we have to be very clear on what we want them to do. Absolutely. Clarity on what you want them to do is really key. Thank you for sharing that. So don't be missing in action, be in the front line, talk to your employees. Just being there, saying hi is good. Okay. So daily meetings is a good idea when we are away in times like this. Decide also on your communication channels. Decide how you will work together during these times. How will we communicate internally? How will we communicate externally? How will this way of communication affect my clients? How will it affect my infrastructure? How will it affect my business continuity? So decide on these communication channels and set them up properly. Set up your system properly so you can work with your team well. Now, let's start with internal communication. As we said, you have to talk to your team daily. For example, during this discussion, we have daily a 15-minute meeting in the morning. We are about 15 usually who meet. Some of the team members cannot meet in the morning. Usually we meet around 15 people we are meeting in the daily meeting. It takes us 15 minutes. If you have a structure on how you go about your meeting, it only takes 15 minutes. And there are ways to do that. Plan your tasks for the day. If you do only one thing today, what will it be? Also, when you talk to your team internally, make sure they know you are there to talk to them at any time. You have to understand their feelings. Also, let them know that they are responsible at this time. So we have to look at both sides. So we don't want to be lost in our feelings. And at the same time, we don't want to we don't want to leave our feelings out of it, but also we don't want to let our feelings take over, right? So we cannot actually allow team members to talk about, because of how I feel, I cannot carry on my responsibilities. That is not acceptable. So we have to take on responsibilities, even though we might have some negative feelings, some tough times, etc. So please, when you let employees off the hook, not do their responsibilities in times like this, you are actually adding to their insecurities, making it harder for them to adapt to the situation. So listen to their feelings, listen to what they have to say, but at the same time, they have to be responsible in times like these. When we communicate externally, this is also important. We need to communicate externally. My employees, we have to know that we have to go back and talk to our customer. So we have to keep in touch with our external stakeholders. Be clear on who speaks for you. Now, depending on what type of organization you have, you might be a public organization, you might be a private organization that sometimes maybe the press approaches your team. Your team better know what to say if they are approached by media. Now, if you're not a company who will get approached by media, that's fine. Some companies will be approached by media. So they have to know, what do they say? Who speaks for us? They should know who to refer to. What is the sentence that they have to say? What's the key message to our clients? When you talk to the client, what do you say? What are we allowed to say? What is not good to say? Okay. So what your employee says is what your company is saying. We have to take care of the employee mindset. Make sure that your employee's mind is in the right place. So they have to be, this is the time to be responsible. You don't want people to hijack your meetings. You don't want people to hijack your meeting by taking over the meeting and using it for their own reasons. What that means, for example, let's say that it's really tough for me to work from home. My internet connection is not that good. I can't focus because I have siblings or children or at home that I cannot focus, sure. As a leader, you need to listen to your team members. But this is not a reason to hijack a meeting when we are sitting down, discussing a client, discussing a situation. This does not work. So you have to be careful about that. Don't let people hijack the time, hijack the team's time. Also, especially in groups, when we are in groups, notice, are we building positive energy or negative energy? This is very important. I want to talk about this a little bit. There are some statements that you see, that you hear in meetings that you have to be careful about. For example, there are statements that really put people down. It will drag your whole team down. For example, when everything we talk about is why we cannot get to our goals, why we cannot do things now, what is the problem right now? This is really not good, because what we're saying, basically, the person who's saying that, they're saying, let these problems go away and I will do my job. Well, these problems are out of control. So as an employee, you're off the hook. So let these problems go away and then I will act. Then my time comes, which is totally not true. There are things well within your control as an employee. You have to take responsibility and do your part. Another thing we have to be careful about, listen to what your team is saying. When people say, for example, one of the statements that I really hate, when people say, I will do my best. This is a sign, a troubling sign, when people say, I will do my best. It means I will do my best, and if that does not work, then it does not work, which is not what you want. So when people tell me, I will do my best, I say, no, I want you to get the job done. I don't want, maybe it does not require your best. Maybe it requires something beyond your best that you have to go learn. So please go learn it. But don't tell me you will do your best. It's not about doing your best. So watch out for the mindset of the employees. One of the sentences I've heard from my team, from some of my good team members, things like, here is this statement. Listen to this statement. Easier said than done. Very dangerous statement. Easier said than done. So what is he telling you or she telling you when they say this? They're telling you it's hard, but we know it's hard. So why are we mentioning it? Why are we talking about how hard it is? Be careful. This is a statement that we say when we feel the task is too difficult. The situation is too difficult. I would rather be off the hook because it is easier said than done. Be careful about the mindset. Pay attention to what people are saying. Pay attention to what it really means and hold people responsible, hold people accountable. Very important. Now, remember, we are going to go to a new normal. So when people say we will go back to normal, there will be a normal, but a new normal. It will never be the same as it was. And if it will be, I mean, I believe in putting scenarios, and I'll talk about that also, about putting the different scenarios that are coming. So you can anticipate what will happen, because nobody knows exactly what will happen. You can just anticipate. I will talk about that. But what we need to know is that things will change. We need to discover the changing culture in your organization. People are not the same as they were before the lockdown, before the pandemic, because during crisis, people behave differently. There is a trauma that is happening in a way to all of us at different levels because of what happened. How does that affect my culture? How does it affect us as individuals? How does it affect our culture? We're changing as an organizational culture. Are you paying attention to this change? What's happening in your organization culture? Where are people going in this culture? As individuals and also as a group. You have to be very careful about that. So be curious when people say things, ask them to explain, what do you mean by this? Tell me more, etc. You have to pay attention. Now, sometimes this is difficult when you are busy, but you have to pay attention to the change in culture. We have another question here related to how can you tackle the mindsets of teams during the daily call? You have mentioned some individuals in the team dragging the others down. How you will tackle this situation? This is an excellent point, and I will share in a moment. We will do this through ground rules and putting a structure to our meeting, which means what do we discuss in the meeting is really important. If I have a team member who has a personal issue outside the agenda that needs to be discussed, they can come to me and talk to me. When we are one-on-one, it's okay. They can be negative because like a lightning rod, I can absorb that and work with it. But if he or she is being negative to my whole team, we're going to get in trouble because people affect each other. Here's another problem that happens is that when we are also remotely working, people can talk to each other and you don't have much control over that. So you don't know who is spreading what kind of information to who. So your message is important. If there is no message from you, then somebody else is taking over the responsibility for sending the message about where things are, how we need to think. And your culture is being developed behind the scenes and you are not even aware of it. So you have to be really careful. So put a structure to your meeting, put ground rules. This is very true. This is very, very important. Okay, there are other questions. We will definitely go over that. There are some questions as we go. I will talk about some more of these questions. We will tackle some questions also at the end. Please keep sending the questions. Thank you. All good questions. Another thing we need to talk about is, we said in the beginning, you cannot depend on your phone, on WhatsApp, on Zoom. That is not enough. This is not a communication system. We need to choose our communication tools carefully. What does this mean? Give you an example. I like to always give examples about what we are using, what I'm using for clients. We are using a combination of tools. I will mention them now that are based on Microsoft Teams. You don't have to go with Microsoft Teams. I'm not trying to sell you Microsoft. We're not a technology. We're technology agnostic as far as brand agnostic. But there are communication tools that you need to use. You have to have a system. The system should include something that will help me stay connected. You can use Slack, you can use Microsoft Teams, you decide. There are tons of tools out there. So you decide what you want to use. You need also something that will help you with your productivity. How productive are we? You want your team members to know, and you want to know how productive are we, how idle are we, how much we are doing, what are we doing, where are we spending our time. This is very important. Another thing you need something that will break the dryness of not being together. Like, for example, tools that allow you to give attaboy, they call them, or give praise, etc. Something to have fun. A tool maybe that allows you to have an icon, a smile, a cup of coffee, a visual, etc. There's a tool I really like. It's in beta right now, and we're trying to actually bring it now to customers. It's called Worker. In this tool, you can actually be in the office, but virtually. So you are in the office, but virtually. We're working on that. We're experimenting with that with our organization. Let me show you the tools that we use. Here are the things that we are currently using. The setup that we have. Slack we are not using right now, but Slack is good. We can use Slack. We're using a combination of Microsoft Teams, Trello, Karma, and Jibble. Together, but again, you need a process for it. So you cannot just make it and think people will create something out of it. There has to be a process. There has to be a structure that you need to create. So we created Microsoft Teams. We created structure. We created an area for different products and services, for different types of discussions. Also in Microsoft Teams, you need to determine how will you deal with sharing information. Do we share by email? Do we have like a SharePoint where we put our data? Where do we put the data? How do we share our calendars? So this has to be thought of. Doesn't take much. In addition, we use Trello in our daily morning meetings. And our rule is if there is a task you're working on, it better be on Trello. Excuse me. And on Trello, we use the Agile Kanban approach, like the Scrum, where we have to-do lists, doing list, and done list. That's all. We keep it simple. We use karma as a tool to give each other praise. And we use Jibul to look at our productivity and sign in and out. I believe signing in and signing out is very important. Okay. Let's take another question. By the way, regardless of what you use, make sure you use something that requires zero training. Don't get into complicated stuff. Everything I mentioned here is really simple. Okay, so here we go, another question. Working remotely is no longer a privilege. Employer and employees must reach clear agreement on how to be productive. Absolutely, I like that. Yes. There is a huge responsibility on the employer to get employees working productively from home. Absolutely, that is a very good point. I agree with that. A very good point. We will take some more questions as we go. Okay. So here are some of the tools that we can use. Also, another thing that you need to look at is to ask, what did you find out about yourself and about your team during this period? Because this is important. This is part of the learning. This is an opportunity. Crisis is an opportunity to learn about self and about the team. Sometimes you find positives in these situations. So you have to ask yourself, what did you find out about yourself? Found out lots of things about myself. Found out things about my work patterns. How much of my day was actually wasted? How much the different times of working times affect me. I'm more aware of where I spend my time now at work. I also understand more the dynamics. It's really interesting, actually. Being physically distant, but I feel closer to the psyche of my team, how they work, their trends, when are they productive, in which parts. Many of the team members we changed their actually roles during this period, because we learned more about their strengths, we learned more about the challenges, etc. So it's very important to ask this question all the time. Here are a few things that you need to remember. One of them is being tough, not rough. This is very important. If you are a commanding person, what's called in DISC the D personality, or in the core personality, something called the commanding personality or the directing personality. Be careful to be tough, not rough. There's a big difference between the two. Tough is someone who holds the team to higher standards of performance, to higher values, and they always ask more from the team. This is tough, and it's wonderful for you and for your team, even though they're gonna hate you for it once in a while. If you don't want to be rough, rough means that you are abusive, vulgar, loud, angry, putting down the meaning of people. You don't want that. So you want to be tough, but not rough. Very important. Remember, some of your team members will fall. Not everybody. This is not made for everybody, the situation right now. Some of them will fall. What I see in my team, some of them are just as if nothing has happened. Some of them actually rose to the occasion. Some of them are lost. They're out there. They look like, to me, they seem like they are just sitting and waiting for a request from me to do something, but nothing more. They seem, some of them I saw they lost the discipline. Some of them I noticed that they want actually more work. It's really interesting. So those who will fall, you have to redirect them quickly and request changes. Tell them what you expect. How do you want them to behave? What results you want from them? And monitor that carefully. So if you see something needs redirection, ask them to put some action items where in 1 week you will see a difference in what they are doing. Be clear with your team and do this with empathy, which means you have to feel with your team. I like the methodology that I forgot the name of it. I think it's called Negotiating the Impossible, but not sure. He says always start with the context. After the context, you talk about the process, and then you empathize. So when you talk to your team, you need to redirect. First of all, show them the big picture of where things need to be and why we need it that way strategically. Then tell them the process on how to get there. First, I need you to do this, then we do this, then I will give you this, then you will give me this, etc. process. And then you empathize by saying, I know this is difficult. I know, but I know you can do it. I know you have the ability. I know this is challenging time, and I'm counting on you. Okay? So mention your expectations clearly and what you need from them, and tell them what you are getting instead of these expectations. Unfortunately, tell them, I asked for this, but unfortunately, I'm getting something else. And be clear and candid and listen to what they have to say. This is very important. Okay, all right. Here's another important point. Listen, but don't take excuses, right? There are no excuses. We're a team. We need to score. We are out there reaching for our goals. So talk to them about what level of work you expect from them. Let them tell you also their expectations from you. What do they need from you? But don't let their performance be contingent on them getting something or getting an unrealistic or undoable request now. For example, nobody, it's not acceptable for a team member to say, you know what, I can't work at home. When we open, I'll go back to the normal, productivity and I'll do better. That's not acceptable. We have to deal with the challenges in the situation. We cannot say that an uncontrollable situation will have to change before I change. You have to create the change. This is very important. Yesterday or the day before, I was with a friend. He owns many businesses actually globally. And, like everybody else, he was affected by these times. One of the things he told me is that one saying that has worked for him always, and it's working for him now. He says, when he works with employees, he remembers this: if there is any doubt, then there is no doubt. I know it sounds confusing, but think about it this way. When you're working with an employee and you are in doubt, you're not really sure if you're getting what you want from this employee. You're not really sure if this is working for you. Then there is no doubt it's not. Then there is no doubt you're not getting it. So when there is any doubt, there is no doubt. Okay. So don't leave things saying, I'm not sure if, I know that I'm not comfortable with what I'm getting from so-and-so, but maybe he is or she is doing what she's supposed to do, and I'm not paying attention. So when there is any doubt, there is no doubt. There is a problem. Even if that problem is in your head, you need to get this fixed, right? And you do that by talking to your employees. You can always start with, I get the feeling that I don't find you when I need you. I'm not getting the productivity I used to get. And listen to them, let them tell you. Let them tell you why. This is very important. We will answer questions now. There are a bunch of questions. If you have more questions, please do send. And there are some similar questions, so we will bundle them together. Next webinar will be Thursday, 3 days from now. We will talk about what are the best tools and techniques that we will use to digitize the business. How can you digitize your business? Very important now. So we will talk about that in our next session. You will find more resources at Case in Point Consulting on our LinkedIn, on our YouTube, on our blog at caseinpointco.com. And you can always email me, amango@caseinpointco.com. Let's do some questions. This is what I had for you today. Let's look at some of the questions, try to bundle them in groups. All right. All right. Okay, let's see. So people are asking about working remotely. What is the future of working remotely? How widespread it will be? So there's more than one question about that. Working remotely is here to stay. Many companies tried it, like us, we tried it. We love it because it was a reality and we had to deal with it. And now we feel it's working actually better than in, I mean, everything has pros and cons, but we're more comfortable working remotely. We'd love to go back to the office, you know, see each other, talk, etc. But when we are looking objectively at this, we can work remotely and we can meet once in a while, go to for a coffee or eat or discuss things. Yeah. So this is here to stay. And I think you'll see more of this. Also, we don't know what the scenario will play after this. Some people talk about new waves of this. Some people talk about other things that might be coming up. So we don't know. We're not really clear on what will happen in the future. But one thing that companies are finding out, those who are not able to work remotely are missing out on great opportunities at this time. So people don't want to miss on opportunities, and probably they will come back and deal with this. There are questions about how do you set up a system to ensure you take advantage of working remotely. Remember, any system, you need people, you need process, you need tools, and you need data. So just like you have roles and responsibilities in your organization, in your physical organization, you need the same thing in your virtual organization. Some of them might shift a little bit, but in general, there has to be someone responsible. For example, for us, there is somebody responsible for Trello. They are the same people who were responsible for our pipeline. Somebody needs to be responsible for the coordination of the meetings. Somebody is responsible for the HR aspect. Somebody is responsible for the IT. That's also the net admin. So you have to actually ensure that there are responsibilities clear. The operation manager should also have the process in place. And somebody should be there to enforce the process. One of the tools that worked for us beautifully is the OKRs. The objectives and key results, the system that we use. We have a cloud system that helps us ensure we manage performance in a proper way. This helped us a lot. You need an owner for the system. You need someone who actually audits and checks and controls and helps employees and team members get the best results for themselves and for the company. So you need definitely to set that up. Somebody should be responsible for your system. This could be also your net admin. There is a question here regarding burnout. This is a good question also. Yeah, I feel the same way as you do. How do we avoid burnout from working remotely? One of the things that I noticed working remotely is that there's a gray area between personal and non-personal time, and actually work is winning over the personal time. So it's taking over. How do we fix that? One, make sure you identify a work area at your home. Even if it's not really an office, there has to be an area where you work. This helps you get your mind off the work once you leave that area. This is one of them. The other thing that you need to do to avoid burnout is to do the activities that we talked about. Like we said, daily exercise. You can do that even in closed quarters. The meditation, the breathing, all of these small things make a big difference. So there are questions about how we get the daily meeting running. Make sure your daily meeting, what worked for us is that we are used to what we call stand-up meetings, impromptu stand-up meetings at the office when we are at the physical office. Make sure these meetings don't go more than 15 minutes. In the beginning, they might go like half an hour, but later you should get them to 15 minutes. How do you do that? Make sure when you discuss, some people put a rule. For example, when we head into the office in the morning, the only thing we are allowed to say in the morning meeting is that the key thing that I will do, what support do I need, what are the, and if there are issues that I need support with to get the job done. But we don't discuss it more. We take it offline and continue discussion. And that usually cuts the time, does not require the time, as much time. You need structure, you need somebody to be a minute taker, you need to talk to people who usually take too much time talking, etc. All right. There's another question here related to, okay, we talked about these things. Yeah. Okay, if there are any other questions, I think we covered most of the things that people asked here. Please, if you have any other questions, feel free to write to me. Call me, contact me if you'd like to chat about any of these or specifically about your company. I would love to talk to you. Thank you so much for attending today and for giving me from your time, your precious time. It's a pleasure. I hope I also see you on Thursday. We'll talk about digitizing the business, very important subject. And as always, we will keep things practical and we will hopefully share things that you will find useful. Thank you so much and have a good night.